Hi, it's Leslie Meredith with Breakbulk Events and Media. I'm here in the studio with our very good friend, Susan Oatway from Drewry. Welcome.
Thank you.
Nice to see you. Now, Susan did her own presentation today and then joined the Leadership Forum, a talk between EPCs and carriers. So let's first get a fleet update, and then we'll hit the high points of the big panel.
Okay. So my presentation was mainly about the fact that demand growth has weakened even since the beginning of the year, and definitely since we were here 12 months ago. Weaker demand growth, weaker level of new buildings. So the order book is only at 53. Very, very low order book. And
does that concern you?
I don't think so. I think what it says is there is no investor confidence in this sector, and there's very little optimism because there's no money to buy to build new ships. And I think until we see the ramifications of IMO 2020 and what's going to happen with some of those older vessels, and we get over this period of uncertainty with regards to demand as well, I think we're likely, to be honest, a small order book is not necessarily a bad thing at the minute. So it's a lot easier for us to sort the supply problem out if we're not also looking at new buildings coming in all the time.
Absolutely. I understand that. So what do you forecast around the IMO 2020 once that kicks in on January 1st?
So I've just been asked that question. That's like
I'm going to ask you again.
That's like my real crystal ball question. So I think there's a number of things that are uncertain with regard to IMO 2020. There's the final cost and the availability of the fuel oil. We now know which ships are going scrubbers and which are going with the fuel oil. Very few of the multipurpose and heavy lift fleet are going scrubbers. Most of them are taking, mainly because the ships aren't big enough and they haven't got the spare cash to put them on board. So they're going with the fuel. How, though, that extra cost, and it could be as much as $300 a tonne, more expensive to burn this new fuel, how that extra cost is moved within the market, who takes some of that pain from the carriers, that is still uncertain. Whether the older ships will be at a stage where that extra cost is going to make them no longer viable, and therefore we see an increase in scrappings. We've been talking about that for the last year. It hasn't happened. We're looking at, again, 2019 demolition levels are at least as low as 2018. But it's possible that come 2020, come January, that we'll start to see those demolition levels rising. So there's still a lot of uncertainty, and I genuinely think all bets are off until probably middle of next year, or maybe even this time next year. We'll be much clearer about how the market is coping with that whole new regulation.
Interesting. All right. Well, let's move on to your second session. That there were a lot of people up there on the stage. So tell me, what were the top items that you wanted to convey?
So one of the big ones that we talked about was how the industry is coping with being how they're coping with their new innovations and how they're becoming more relevant, and what things are helping to do that. And I think one of the things we missed in the initial conversation was about the consolidation within the sector, and the fact that consolidation is all about the carriers. It's all about improving cost efficiencies for the carriers, which is, as it should be. But as one of the other panelists said, the ships are still there, and we need a consolidation of the supply if we're going to do anything about being more responsible for for the cargo on board the ship. If your ship is 30 years old and it's not as efficient, then there are issues with how you're treating your shipper as well.
Won't natural market influencers sort of solve that problem?
I think there is going to be a lot more of that because of, as I've just said, the environmental regulations. And I think Bill Keyes mentioned that actually over tonnaging is a good thing for him because it keeps the rates down. So there's I think there has to be a bit more of a balance the way we're going at the minute. There's a huge level of overage vessels, a huge number of that oversupply, and we've got to bring that back.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, looks like we're in a little bit of a wait and see situation. And we will look forward to hearing an update, your professional update, next year at Breakbulk Americas 2020.
I very much hope so. Be great to see you then.
Excellent. Thanks so much.